Okay, well, welcome again to another workshop here at the test camp. This is FTCE. I can read it up there. General Knowledge Test, Essay. All right, this we know is the third of the 4 workshops for the Florida General Knowledge Test. So let's go ahead and start discussing how learning and practicing test skills will empower your test confidence. Now, those of you joining us live online, you're welcome to contribute your comments anytime. We'll include as many as possible during the discussions. And if you join us directly through the Test Camp YouTube channel on demand, welcome to you too. And of course, you can pause or restart or replay that video anytime. Again, this workshop is for the general knowledge test. We suggest that you train in this order. The first 3 tests are related to communication, and the competencies are built in sequence. The workshop for mathematics, well, that's a standalone computation test. All right, you likely know by now that around here the motto is prepare, practice, perform. Everyone who has successfully completed the training has passed their test. And you might ask, how's that possible? If you've been in the other workshops, you know. That's because test taking is a skill which requires practice. And if they finish the practice with us, they finish the training, they've always passed. So let's go ahead and get started. To prepare here at the test camp means understanding yourself. It's an honest assessment of how well you know the test content and your testing skills, your abilities. We start by learning the test blueprint. Many of you have participated in the teacher career workshops, so you know that the blueprint provides all the information you need to fully understand a test. This can also be a good first step to creating what we call My Draft. That's an area here, especially set aside for the FTCE GK essay, that provides an opportunity to submit an essay for review. You get to practice. More on that later in the workshop. Let's go ahead and start learning more about that blueprint. Now here's an overview of the entire general knowledge test, or the GK. Notice the GK is a series of 4 individual tests. Each one's very different. The one reason why many teachers decide to schedule this on 2 days is just simply because it's so long. And sometimes that's possible, so check with your test administrator if you'd like to do 2 sections on one day and 2 another. Make sure there's not an extra charge for that. Now your GK essay can be submitted 1 time, and that time allotted is 50 minutes. Now knowing this will help put you on a pace for success, because you decide how much time to spend and to invest on your outline, your draft, and then your review. That's the 3 parts of writing an essay: the outline, then you make a draft, then you go back and review. You'll have an opportunity to practice that routine here at the test camp, and then go ahead and submit that, and we'll review it for you and give you a score back. More on that in just a minute. And speaking of scoring, what score is required for the essay test here? Do you know? Anybody know the percent to pass? You're correct. There is no percent to pass. Unlike the other 3 GK tests, the 2 communications, English language skills and reading, and the GK math, your essay will not be graded by percentage. Instead, 2 professional graders receive your essay anonymously from around the state, and then they report your score back based on how well you demonstrate what's called the competencies. You remember these from the other workshops, and there's 6 of them. That's right. We learned these in the 2 communication workshops earlier. All right, so let's go ahead and take a moment here now. Talk about this together and see if you can come up with all 6 competencies there at your tables. Okay, see if you can list them, and let's see which group can put them in order. All right, we'll come back as a group in a couple of minutes. Hey, for those of you joining us live online, welcome to you. See if you can list those. We'll put them up here on the discussion boards. And if you're here on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this is a good time to check your knowledge. Can you list all 6 competencies in order? All right, when you come back, we'll compare your list with ours. Okay, it looks like most of the groups are on top of this. What'd you get back there? What's the first competency? Yeah, everybody got this. The main idea, or what we call ideas. And that's logical, right? But in this case, you don't get to write just on any idea. Instead, the ideas are going to be provided for you in the form of prompts. Right, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll get some examples here in the workshop. What was the second competency? You've got it, purpose. Now that you have the ideas, What are you going to write about, right? The next step is how are you going to write about it? With what purpose? Again, we're going to take a closer look at purpose in just a few minutes. The next competency begins the planning stages, the organization, or what is called structure. How many people got structure? Everybody, okay. Again, this is the next logical step, right? First, you have the idea about what you're going to write about. 2, have a purpose for speaking, or in this case, writing. Then plan or organize what you're going to say, and that's called the structure. All right, and then we go to the fourth competency, which is choosing the appropriate words, which we're going to call vocabulary. All right, so what is meant by appropriate words? See if you have any ideas on this. The tables, we're going to talk about this in just a moment. I was going to maybe forge through the competencies here, but this is important. Take a couple minutes and determine if you or your colleagues know what I'm talking about. What does it mean to have appropriate words or appropriate vocabulary? I'll give you a hint. Appropriate means to tie back to the ideas or the purpose. All right, we'll compare your thoughts as a group when we come back. Hey, welcome again to those of you joining us today live online. Share your thoughts and we'll put them up here on the discussion boards. And if you're joining us on demand by the Test Camp YouTube channel, this might be a good time to pause the recording and think about what's meant by appropriate vocabulary. And we'll be here when you restart the video. Here we are back up here. I think most of us have this. The words chosen are expected to match the ideas of the essay. For example, what if you were writing an essay, you got a prompt about how to teach reading, okay? So what are some of the words that the readers might expect to encounter? Phonics, for example. Fluency, good, over here. Phonemes. Phonomic awareness, all right, look at you, right, so a lot of reading folks in here. So yes, these are all words associated with the main idea, so they would be expected to be found in the essay. How about words chosen to establish and maintain the purpose? Okay, any thoughts on this? Yes, words have to have a certain tone, don't they? According to the purpose, they're either going to be argumentative or they're going to be more informative. And we'll talk more on that in just a few minutes also. All right, moving on to this structure. What's that mean? What do we say that means? Organization, that's right. So again, you're going to choose words that are related to structure. Now, how in the world does that happen? Well, these are called transition words. We're going to talk about those here before we leave here today too. All right, so words like consequently, we're going to look at words later in this essay. See how that works? Consequently, those are transition words. All right, enough on that. On to the fifth one here. Vocabulary was choosing the appropriate words. This competency is related to using the words correctly. Okay, you okay with that? Correctly. That's an adverb, describes a verb. What describes a noun? Right, an adjective. So this is what the graders are looking for here, mostly the proper use of words like adverbs, adjectives. And any ideas about the final competency? You think it's errors? They might be looking for errors. That's true, but the competency is called mechanics. Okay, so this is not the mechanics of reading, it's the mechanics of writing. And these were discussed in the other two communication workshops. So what errors are the graders focusing on? Spelling, there you go. What else? Punctuation and capitalization. Right, we got all three. So then, here again is a list. And here's what we created at the test camp to address the draft that you're going to send to us. What we created was a rubric. All right, it's going to look like this. We don't have the time to look at this now. You can print it off later. But this is how our graders give specific feedback in each area. Okay, so we got this enlarged here so that everybody can see it. And as we know, the first competency up there in the corner, that's ideas. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at what ideas is all about. All right, a lot to see here. You earn credit towards a passing essay by developing and maintaining key ideas, but there's a problem. Okay, do you remember what we said? You don't just get to write on any topic, so it's not going to be your key idea. There are going to be ideas given to you, and you have to choose one. Now, these ideas are called the prompts, right? You must think of it, you could think of them maybe as the topics, for example. If you pay for a webinar or a course, or you find an old study guide, be careful, because prompts are no longer created on general topics like who's the most influential person in your life and why, or discuss an important American leader. None of that. Instead, you're asked to discuss topics related to education. This is good news. This is a big advantage. Can anybody guess why? Okay, there's only so many topics. Well, actually, that's kind of true, because you're studying education topics right now. They're fresh in your mind, and it helps limit the possible topics that they might ask on. They're going to ask about the topics related to the professional education test. So you can predict and plan for these topics. Here's how you can do it right here. Remember, these were called the FEEPs. You've heard of this, right? The Florida Educator Accomplished Practices. These are the competencies, what Florida educators are expected to know and be able to do. So it makes sense that they're going to ask you a question on your essay about these. And here they are, the 8 competencies. Has anybody been to this workshop yet? There's a set of 3 workshops. A few of us have. It's okay. That comes later on. You have to have that before you graduate. At the test camp, we have a free workshop for this, for the professional education test. It does all 8 competencies, and then we have 2 separate ones, one just for the majors and one just for the minors that you see up here. Let's run through these real quick. There you've got planning. Florida teachers are expected to know state standards and plan lessons accordingly. So that makes sense, right? That they might ask you a question about planning. All right. Now, those of you watching the video, this is another good time to go ahead and check your understanding. I think what we're going to do is talk about these, and let's let everybody have a chance to see if they can fill these out here. All right, so let's go ahead and do that now, and then we'll see how you filled out your list, and we'll be back as a group in just a minute. All right, so again, if you're watching the video, this is a good time to check your understanding. See how many of the 8 competencies you can name. Can you do the FEEPs in order, starting there with planning? And we'll be back in just a moment to compare your list with ours when you restart the video. Right. Okay. All right, well, we're back. We're going to run down the list. Does anybody remember why we're looking at these again? Yeah, these are the general topics we can assume that they're going to use when they create the essay prompts. Right, no more asking about your favorite president or anything like that. All right, the FEEPs cover nearly all the ideas associated with education. The second FEEP is environment. That means learning environment. Creating an atmosphere for learning. Okay, how many people got that one? Almost everybody. Next one is called teaching or strategies. Think about that. You probably have a class in this. So you plan the lesson, you set up the learning environment. Now it's time to do what? Teach, right? So you got to talk about the strategies. Yes, and then you report on how well the students learn, and what we call that is assessment. So if you're entering the teacher education program, you have to recognize how the FEEPs are woven into these course titles you might be taking. Yes, go ahead, way back in the back. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for the people listening in. If you haven't had the courses yet, how can you expect to write an essay based on the ideas, on these FEEPs? Okay, well, that's a good question. We're going to get into that in just a moment. Basically, I can tell you now, your essay doesn't have to include any expertise. This is an exercise in writing, not how much you know about these things. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that is a good question. All right, the next one down here at the bottom, professionalism. How to act and improve as a professional. Unlikely they're going to ask you about this, but still something should be on your radar. Law and ethics, the standards that guide expected behavior. They might give you a situation you're supposed to respond to. I don't think so. Anybody know what this is? English language learners, right. And finally, used to be called reading here in Florida, now called literacy, the teaching of reading and the development of students' reading comprehension, which is not just an elementary grades thing, it's kindergarten through 12th grade. So we can predict that at least one of the 2 prompts you're given is going to address these topics. All right, you have all those written down, right? So let's go ahead and try something. Since you know all these, you got them written down, I'm going to take them off of here, and here's a prompt. See if you can see, not out loud now, see if you can say, write it down, which one of the FEEPs is being asked here. We'll come back to this example in a minute. All right, we're going to try another one here. What's the idea here? Again, not out loud, just write it down. We'll come back to it. All right, everybody got it? All right, so back to the first example. What was the idea here? Teaching strategies, all right? So you think this might be a prompt used by the state for the GK essay? Sure. All right, something similar to this? Sure. Let's look at the prompt 2 again. Which competency are we talking about here? Planning. So why do you think planning? All right, teachers have to continually change their lesson plans. Anybody else? How about over here? You think professionalism, because you have to keep up with what's new. Okay, but in either case, see how knowing the FEEPs is going to help you out? You'll be less surprised by the prompts. You don't know exactly what they're going to ask, but you kind of know the general ideas that they might ask. Okay, the next step then is to talk about the purpose. Again, off the big rubric that you can print out for yourself, and it's on the training site. All right, there's good news about purpose too. You can prepare this in advance. When you write an essay, it's either going to be argumentative or it's going to be informative. It's just that simple. So let's discuss what those terms mean. Argumentative essays generally designed to express an opinion, or they're designed for persuasion. Okay, you get the difference there? Who wants to chime in on this one? What's the difference between opinion and persuasion? Okay, right over here, and I'll repeat for the people listening in. Okay, persuasion is more involved. How? What are you talking about there? It's a call to action. I couldn't have said that better. It is. Persuasion is not just your opinion, it's a call to action, isn't it? It is more involved. We suggest that's not one you answer, and it's probably not going to be asked. You're not going to be asked to write a persuasive essay. Very unlikely. Now, there's also two main types of informative essays. The first one is to simply, as it says in the title, provide information. In teaching strategies courses, you might find this called direct teaching or telling. You're just providing information you think the audience doesn't have. And back to the question earlier, you don't have to be accurate. This is just a writing exercise. It's not about how much you know about a certain subject. The second type of informative essay is an explanation. Or in teaching terms, you might think of this as providing directions or instructions. And it's not very likely that you're going to want to attempt that as your purpose either. So that leaves you with just the two choices. You're either going to give your opinion or you're going to give information. Right? And don't be too concerned about making that decision. That's actually going to be provided for you in the prompt. And here's what I mean. Let's take a look at that prompt 1 again and see if you can see it. What are they actually, watch this, what are they actually asking you to do here? Yes, did you see it stuck in there? Discuss your perspective. So they want to know your opinion or they want to know information. All right, your perspective. Let's look at this prompt 2 again. What are they asking you to do here? Discuss the advantages and disadvantages, right? So you'll be prompted for opinion or for information. You go either way you want. It's up to you. The idea here is to provide all the information that you think you know, and it's all right if you don't know very much, or if it's even accurate. That's not the point. It's a writing exercise. But in either case, express your opinion or providing information. The readers are looking for organization of your ideas. So what do we call that? To be well organized is the structure. So when you think about structure, as you know from the English and the reading workshop, you think about how you're going to organize what you're going to say. And the first question that's generally asked, what do people always say about how long does it have to be, right? How long does the essay have to be? What have you heard? 3 paragraphs over here, 500 words. Well, our suggestion is 4 paragraphs designed to work together. This means the development of 2 related ideas. Here's how it works, as you see here. So that first paragraph, that's the introduction. All right, next paragraph, talk about your first idea, whatever it was, the advantages or so on. Second one, the disadvantages perhaps. And then, of course, wrap it up with a conclusion. And be sure to address both ideas in the conclusion. And that's it, pretty much. 4 paragraphs all working together to make an essay that you can be described then as what they call logical and coherent. That's what the graders are looking for, logical and coherent. No word count. However, some writers insist on making the format longer. I'm not sure why they think longer is better. How in the world could you make this longer, or why you'd want to? I don't know, in 50 minutes, but they do. So if you want to add a third idea, then what are you going to have to add? Another paragraph, right? So if you're going 5 paragraphs, it's probably going to look a little more something like this. Again, we recommend quality over quantity. 4 paragraphs to work together, that's going to be fine. All right, the next competency is vocabulary. Those of you that went through the English language skills workshop, you might remember the vocabulary is described in the test information guide as the meanings of words, selection of the right word or phrase, and conveying meaning through diction and tone. Do you remember what this is? Yes, considering your purpose. We talked about that. Considering your audience, even better. So back to the scoring rubric, we find the word usage and mechanics down there in the bottom. We mentioned this earlier and in the reading workshop. The graders are essentially looking for errors made by the writer. You know, what are usage errors? We talked about these. Misusing words, adjectives, adverbs. That's the usage errors. What about the mechanic errors? You had all 3 before. Spelling, capitalization, punctuation. Right. You just don't want to lose points or distract from what your essay by having errors. So they're expected to be few and insignificant so that they do not interfere with your ability to read the essay. And that's it. So here again is the rubric used at the test camp to provide the feedback. Now about the score, back to the score, you need 4 out of 6 basically from both of your readers, and we make it 40 out of 60 because we want to be a little more accurate for you. But what you really want to be is across the board. So you're trying to get 4 out of 6 from 2 readers. You're trying to get 8 out of 12 total. Any questions about the test that you have now might be a good time to go ahead and ask me about this. We try to keep it as coherent and congruent as we could to the state. Yes, go ahead over here. I'll repeat it. The state's rubric in the test information guide has only 5 areas, you're saying. Okay, well the 5th area for them is errors. And what we did, we broke it up into 2 sections here. So, you know, what kind of errors? We tried to help you out by saying, well, what kind of errors? Is it going to be a usage error? You're using adverbs instead of adjectives? Or is it a mechanics error? So see what we did for you there? Great question. Okay, so let's discuss just a couple minutes what to expect in the test center on test day. We recommend in every other workshop that you meet with the test center assistant before the test day. Just drive down to the test center, go inside, get familiar with the setting, and ask some questions. And then when you come back on test day, you can expect to be stationed at a keyboard that has a simple word processor for your tests, including the essay question. Yeah, go ahead. Question over here. Go ahead. Right, no spell check. It's basically just what they call a notepad, isn't it, to type on. Yes, our understanding is that your essay must be typed. That's a good question for your test center administrator, or your assistant down there. Each center is unique, but most have similar procedures, so that would be good to ask in advance. They're not going to have spell check on it, right? Okay, here's another consideration is distractions. We've heard of many distractions while you're sitting there trying to do your test. What have you heard? You have 2 people walking in and out. What about loud typing? A restroom inside the room. We've heard of this too. Yeah. So when you practice, maybe you include some distractions, have kids run around or something. I don't know. All right. So what do you know about the dry erase sheets policy? Are they going to still handing those out? It'd be good to have some scrap paper. I don't think they're giving you that in Florida. If you're allowed, these would be a valuable tool because you're given 50 minutes from beginning to end to complete your essay. How could the sheets help you? Well, first, you can expect these 2 prompts they're going to give you, the 2 subjects. Are you a planner, someone who prefers to pick a topic and then invest time in outlining it? Or are you a diver, someone who prefers to pick a topic and just start writing? So talk about how that might help you out with those sheets and what your preference is. Talk about this at the table there. What is your preference? All right, share your plan with each other. We'll come back as a group and compare your ideas. Hey, again, for you folks joining us today live online or on demand, this is probably our last break for this workshop, so take this time to consider how you'll make the most of the 50 minutes. And we'll be here when you return. Welcome back. If you participated in the other workshops, you know that we agreed there's no real best approach to this. Everyone has their own personal preference. Making an outline, on the other hand, probably a good idea. All right, in either case, we agreed also you do need to practice at least once, timed. So let's finish up by taking a look more at the recommendations from those who have gone before you and have actually submitted essays here at the test camp. Here's a summary of their 5 keys to success, some of the things they've told us that we should pass along. Their first suggestion is to make sure you keep a consistent point of view. You know what they're talking about here? The voice, first person, right? If you start in first person, stay in first person, that sort of thing. Next is consistent text. What does this mean? If you start in the past, stay in the past. There you go, that sort of thing. Okay, be careful of that, and you can practice this. Next, subject-verb agreement, right? Basic English language skills. All right, clear on that? The fourth recommendation is to attempt to use a variety of sentences if you can, but only if you can do it well. If you're comfortable with writing, then go ahead and do that. Might even throw a question in there as part of your essay. And that's the 4 recommendations. The next one is transition words, and this is big. What do we mean here? The words that connect, right? They connect the phrases in the sentences. So they are in 3 main categories: addition, time, and place. And here's some examples. These are all related to time. So the idea is not to use a lot of these words, but if you do use them, be sure to use them correctly. Okay, here's another list here. These are the ones for time. Let's go back. What were those other ones? Oh, okay, that's for adding on to. Addition. Okay, these are for time. Okay. Not on this list. Consequently. I do see subsequently down there. What's the difference? Do you know? You think the readers know? I bet they do. So if you're going to use it, make sure you understand it. Here's the final list of transition words related to place or location. All right, so again, it's okay to use transition words. Just be sure that they're used properly. There's one more recommendation from your colleagues, the folks who have gone before you. They're often talking about how there's a lot of writing by text going on now, right, on your phone. Everybody does that, right? Now, how's that different from actually writing text? Using complete sentences. What else? Proper grammar, spelling, capitalization, right? So, okay, this is just, a suggestion from those who've written the essay before you. Many of you are likely writing by text more than you're actually writing text nowadays, so you might need a bit of practice before you write this passing essay. All right, and finally, completing an essay is also a skill. So the exercise is complete when you've gone back through and you reviewed everything. The idea is to go back through and review what you've written. Be sure to use the extra time to check how you've represented your writing skills according to the scoring rubric. And take the opportunity to read aloud. Read your essay aloud. You certainly can do this when you practice, and you can do it quietly to yourself even there on test day. All right, so you can do this. It's time to perform with confidence. For you folks joining us today online, answer the question down there on your screen. You can test your knowledge about writing essays, and then you can join us too in the training. There's no better time than now to empower your test confidence.